like automation or equipment and lease it to the manufacturer, right? Which I think is an interesting idea. So
It is a great
instead
idea.
of having to front $150,000, they can just lease it from this leasing company who bought it. 100 degrees and 100% humidity in the summertime, right? And these guys are doing this all day long, right? So it's really difficult even to justify the humanitarianism or whatever you want to call it, right? It's inhuman to even ask these people to do it.
Welcome to Manufacturing Insiders. I have a guest who has a lot of knowledge that a lot of manufacturers could use today. He is really the expert in manufacturing automation and robotics. He has over 20 years of experience in the manufacturing space. Todd Honeyville, welcome to Manufacturing Insiders.
Yeah.
I'm doing well. So I thought it'd be interesting for us to have this conversation because, I work with a lot of manufacturers, mostly on the marketing side, but we have a lot of conversations just about improving efficiency. How are we going to deal with tariffs? How are we going to actually fill all the positions that will be needed if we move manufacturing back to the US? And I think automation has a big part in that. And so I just want to pick your brain today about where does it have an application? What type of company should be thinking about automation and robotics, and what kind of companies shouldn't be thinking about it. So looking forward to picking your brain on this. Just give us a little bit of a background on, how you got to where you are.
Sure. So I've spent my whole career in automation. It's actually since the mid 90s, I went out into the market or into the field. I'm an electrical engineer. And so, and then I initially started working in automation space. I started as a service technician in robotics industry. I worked for Fanuc Robotics, and then worked for a number of different integrators and machine builders, and in the end started my own company. So that's what we do, is we do systems integration, machine building.
Gotcha.
And we do systems for manufacturers, right? So I'm in manufacturing plants often, and I see what they're doing, and it's really different kinds of manufacturing, different levels or sizes of companies. So if we want to talk about who benefits from automation, I would say, and I think we've talked about this a little bit in the past, but the company that has a high volume and a low complexity of parts, meaning let's say you're a machine shop. It's an easy one, right? So you make like a gear, let's say, like one of your products is a gear. You're selling it to some customer, and I don't care what it is, but anyway, so let's say you make 10,000 of them a day, the same part over and over and over. You just continually load the machine and unload the machine. It's the same part, just runs all the time. That's an amazing opportunity for automation, right? So your complexity is really low and your volume is high, right? So that means that you're making good money and it's easy, right? So your operator does the same thing over and over. He's probably got ergonomic issues, right? So there's an ergonomic win generally. Depends on how big the part is, how heavy it is, but even little parts, repetitive stress, or whatever you want to call it, repetitive motions cause problems for operators, right? So a robot does that great. So you can buy a piece of flexible automation, which has another kind of a distinction between automation types, is we call them hard automation and flexible automation.
Okay.
So a robot would be a piece of flexible automation that you could repurpose if your job changed. For example, a machine shop loses that order, right? And now you have this piece of automation that has no job, right? So the sales guy sells a different operation to another, like GM buys this product from us and they've now deprecated the car, right? But the sales guy gets in on the new car, so he gets the new product, but it's different than the old product. So a piece of hard automation, which was tailored specifically to the job, now is generally trash, right? Maybe there's some components that you can reuse, but not usually, and it's usually not very cost effective. So a piece of flexible automation, like a robot, then can be repurposed to the new job, right? Maybe all you have to do is change the tool. Maybe the tool even works because it's just a gripper that moves, right?
Yep.
So those are things that you would consider when you're doing this stuff. But in terms of jobs that are well suited for automation, it's like a gradient, right? So at one end, you have the high volume, low complexity. At the other end, you have low volume, high complexity, right? And those two variables, somewhere in the middle, there's a line where it doesn't become cost effective anymore. And it's really dependent on your metrics of cost effectiveness, right? Like how many operators can you, I don't want to say the word replace, but you know what I mean?
Repurpose.
Repurpose. In this world right now that we live in, generally nobody's getting replaced, right? It's they'll lose, they have cost gains through attrition. You know, you put in a piece of automation, somebody quits, you just don't rehire that for that position. But almost nobody buys automation and then lets go operators, right? That just doesn't happen. There aren't that many operators, and so every factory I go in is shorthanded. So when they put in automation, nobody's getting laid off. I mean, that's my experience.
Right.
So anyway, there's some line where the cost of the automation doesn't make sense anymore, and it's down in this other side of the spectrum, right, where the complexity is high or the volume is too low. So if you make one part ever, right, like a job shop that makes custom parts for people is not a good fit for automation, right? High complexity, low volume.
Right.
High volume. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say, so with that example, so you got the machine shop that's making this one gear, and they're making a million units, well, maybe not, 500 units, 500,000 units a year.
Sure.
What solution do they need? Kind of how are you going to analyze the cost benefit scenario? And is it primarily going to be a robot that's loading the material into the machine, then removing the finished parts, and then placing it on a conveyor? Or is there kind of robotics along the line? So then there's a robot that's putting these in package and palletizing.
So it's really you have to look at the operation, right? So what's the operator doing? How many operators are you talking about, right? So at a high volume operation, there's probably an assembly line-ish kind of thing happening already, right? Like if it's a high volume operation, that means that somebody's like decanting blanks from a bin or something like that, right? Putting them on a conveyor maybe. Another operator is loading and unloading a machine, and then another operator is maybe like putting them in a box, and then maybe there's like a logistics guy running around with a forklift to pick up the box when it's full, take it away, stretch wrap it, that kind of stuff, right? So on a high volume operation, there's a lot of opportunity to automate each step of the way, right? And sometimes we can use the same automation to combine more than one operation, which is a big win, right? So if a guy fully loaded costs, and I'm not going to do the math in my head, I'm going to be too slow at it, but if a guy fully loaded costs, let's say $60K, right? And it's a 2-shift operation, you got $120,000 in his job, right? And if his job is to load and unload, and that's a year, right? If his job is to load and unload and the complexity is small, that's an easy one, right? Because I can put in one cell of like a robot that interfaces with the machine that loads and unloads for maybe 150, right? And so the payback on that, if you're a 2-shift operation, is like really fast, right? It's a year and a little bit. Even a 1-shift operation, especially if you're trying to meet demand with overtime. That's also a no-brainer, right? Maybe that's a 2-year payback, which is on at the big companies, 2-year payback is kind of industry standard.
Yep.
The littler companies, they can see the future a little bit better, I think, and their payback number, they'll let the payback go a little bit longer. But if you think about it as a privately owned small manufacturer, right? You're looking at things in a way that maybe like me and you would look at buying an investment, right?
Right.
If I buy a personal investment, my payback is probably going to be like 10 years, maybe 20 years.
Mm-hmm.
So the small manufacturing guy can see maybe 3 to 5 year payback or something like that as a good, where the line may be, right? But the large companies are always super aggressive because their shareholders need to see quarterly gains, right? So,
right.
But anyway.
So let's say that this machine shop now has 3 different gears that they manufacture, and each one of them has a little bit of a different processing situation. How easy is it to kind of program that solution to switch between those 3 operations? Is that possible?
Yeah. So when I say complexity, there's that what I'm referring to is maybe SKUs, right? Or however you want to quantify a part number, right? So the more part numbers, the more problematic the automation can become, right? And it really depends on the actual physical change in the part too, right? Or if the operations change substantially. So in a machining center, if it's simply just a load and unload operation in a machining center, then the complexity at that side of it doesn't matter so much because we can interface to a machine and we can call a different program, whatever. That's not a big deal. And if the load unload is the same, meaning maybe like it's chucked or something like that, and it's always chucked the same, it doesn't matter. Or if the fixture is always the same and you put the part in the same way every time, it doesn't matter. How you pick and how you can grab the part is what matters, right? So if the part size changes drastically, that can be a problem. Or if the part shape changes drastically, or if for some reason you can't touch a surface or things like that, right? Those are the things that are going to make it more complicated. And if you add like many of those parts, so here, let me give an example. So we did a project for a company loading and unloading. The machine's called a time saver, so some people probably know what that is, but it's basically a finish grinder. So and it's just a big machine that you feed sheet metal parts or plate parts or, and it'll go through the machine and it surface grinds the top lightly, right? It just gets rid of all the imperfections on the top and the bottom and then comes out the other side. So this company was using that machine manually with sheet metal, like the customer or the I don't know, somebody else, the logistics guy would bring over a skid of 600 parts, and they'd be sheet metal parts, and the guy would go pick one up, feed it through the machine, and then on the other side another guy would pick it and put it on the skid. So you'd have to have 2 guys, and all they were doing all day long was feeding parts through the machine. The issue with the project was that they had, I don't know how many SKUs, 300 SKUs, something like that. So, which wouldn't be a problem if, let's say, the sheets were all the same size or similar in size. But not only did they vary widely in size, like from, I think, like 5 feet long and 2 feet wide to like little pieces that were only like 6 by 6 inches. And then they had cutouts in them. Some of them were different, like all kinds of wildly different parts, right? They were all like 20 gauge sheet metal, so that wasn't a problem. The issue was that they were totally different. And they were stainless, so they were non-ferrous. You couldn't use a magnet gripper, right?
Because that's what was in my head, magnet.
Right. So you couldn't use magnets. You had to use suction, right, to pick them. So what we did was and there was still a good possibility. We did this project for them, and it was successful. So this is still possible, right? This is just a hard one. We put 2 robots in, one on each side, right? One to pick and feed the parts, and one to pick and place the parts, right?
Yep.
The hard part was, how do you pick the part? And then how do you pick it on the other side again, right? Because the part goes through the machine, and now we don't know the orientation again, right? The first robot has to figure out what part it is and orient it, put it in the machine. The second robot, and then the orientation's lost, right, through the machine. So then the second robot has to figure out what the orientation is and then reorient it to stack it correctly, right? So basically what we did was we put a vision system over both sides, right, and identified all the different parts, found the corners, found the proper pick location, then did the pick in place, right? And then on the other side, we had to do the same thing, basically, right? But you already knew what part it was, at least on the other side.
Right.
So, and they didn't want, which was an extra piece of trouble, they didn't want the operator to have to select the part. They wanted the system to just figure it out, right? So that's hard. But in the end, this is all doable, right? The trick is the reason it was justifiable was because they had 2 operators. We ended up using used robots so that they saved a lot of money on mechanism cost, right? And they had 2 operators, 2 shifts, though. So it was a pretty big pool of money that they started with, right?
Yep.
And is an ergonomic issue as well. I mean, they put in lift. Is the lift? I don't know what you call them. The lift tables. Sorry. So you put the skid and the parts on a lift table, and they're self-adjusting, self-aligning lift tables. You know, you've seen those before.
Yep.
So they theoretically are always at the right height, but there's still a guy that has to do this all day long, right? And so there's ergonomic issues, there's workman's comp claims, which is all numbers that you can use for justification. Right. So anyway.
Right. And plus what we've talked about, where it's not even just the amount that you would save on, not having that employee, but in most cases, it's that they can't find the employee to do the job in the first place.
Right. Yeah. Another factory we did business with, there were probably 30% down in employees at every day, right? Guys would call off, no show, no call, no shows all the time. And it's because the operations aren't enjoyable for anybody, right? So, I mean, one of the operations we replaced with a palletizer was a human. It was, I think 3 guys were doing it. We put in a palletizer, 1 robot to do the job of 3 guys. But the 25 pounds, I think, was the little box that they had to pick up. So they had to pick up this 25-pound box and put it on a pallet. And then there were, I think there were 13 of them on a layer, 7 layers high. So whatever that comes to, 80, something like that, right? Whatever it is, a lot. So they had to do that, but it actually doesn't matter how many, right? It matters with every 20 seconds, another box had to be placed on the skid for the whole shift, right?
What a job, huh?
Right. This is and these plants aren't air conditioned. This happened to be in the south, so it was 100 degrees and 100% humidity in the summertime, right? And these guys are doing this all day long, right? So it's really difficult even to justify the humanitarianism or whatever you want to call it, right?
Right,
it's inhuman to even ask these people to do it.
Right.
But I don't know. I had some trouble early in my career with the idea of replacing people's jobs with mechanisms, right? I thought that it was maybe the wrong thing to do. But at some point I realized, one, that these jobs, people shouldn't be doing these jobs, right? These are horrible jobs. There are a lot of other jobs, and there really are a lot of jobs available. If you go, I know that the job numbers say that they're I don't remember what it is. I don't know what it is. Do you know what it is right now?
I don't, but I know what you're saying. And, a lot of times they're manipulating the numbers to tell whatever story they
Right.
want.
Yeah, they do that for sure. But there are a lot of jobs out there. Like when I look around, there are jobs, and the
Yeah.
jobs are better than those jobs. Don't get me wrong, I think manufacturing jobs are good. I actually just watched a video. My son sent me a video. BMW plant was like a walk through the BMW plant, and the guy was talking about how many employees they had still. So this plant was a full manufacturing plant for BMWs. I don't remember what car they made, but they still had, I think, 2,500 employees, and it's a fully automated plant, right? So
Mm-hmm.
it's not like these jobs all disappear. There's still a lot of jobs, but they're the ones that don't have ergonomic issues,
Right.
and aren't impossible to do all day long, right?
Right.
So I just feel like that's the right direction. That's the direction we have to go anyway,
Yeah.
especially if manufacturing moves back to the US like it looks like it's going to do, right? We just
Right.
won't have the employee base that we need to support it. We have to automate these jobs.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, and that's the big concern is, in theory, great. Yeah, let's let's boost US manufacturing if you can do it without overtaxing the already huge shortage of labor out there. That would be the key. Um so how much of I would assume that there's situations where you're kind of providing consultation inside of a facility to say, okay, you guys have a lot of variability in your process right now, but if we can do things like X, Y, or Z, now we can apply a robotic solution to it.
sure. Yeah. I mean, generally, we do a lot of business with large corporations, right? They're the ones that buy the most automation. They're the ones that understand it too. So there's another piece of this that people should understand, and that's that you have to manage the automation after it's installed, right? You need to have somebody on staff. Like in a large factory, there are maintenance guys, right? And if they've never had automation before, then it's still like a learning curve, or maybe they have to hire some new people. But there always needs to be people to support the automation, right? Technical people that need to support the automation. If I put a robot into a factory, there needs to be somebody at least that I can train to be able to handle, basic stuff, right?
Right.
Or, I mean, it doesn't. You don't need to have a programmer on staff to, and I don't want to make it sound like you need to have $150,000 guy. You don't. A lot of times we can train like one of the operators has like some extra go get 'em, right? And so we'll train those guys to be like specialists or something like this, right? And
Hmm.
maybe they'll end up with an extra couple of dollars an hour because they can handle some triage, some troubleshooting of the machine that the other guys can't. But maintenance guys are kind of who usually it's in their purview generally, right? Like, so there will be a problem in all systems, right? Everything breaks. So you don't, if you're a manufacturer, you can't generally wait. I mean, it depends on what kind of manufacturing you're in, but generally you can't wait 2 weeks for a service guy to show up or something, right? You have to run. So generally you need somebody on staff who can handle at least something.
Right.
I would say that the small manufacturers that we do business with, they usually have like an owner or somebody like that who's interested in technology already.
Hmm.
So when we put a piece of equipment in, they take some ownership of it, right?
Sure.
Or on maybe a bigger place, maybe like I don't know, let's call it a 10 to $20 million factory. Then they probably have some level of maintenance that we can teach to be these guys. And then the bigger factories, like the guys that do 100, 200, 500 million a year or whatever, those guys have fully dedicated technicians generally, right? And they have lots of automation already, so they understand everything. I just wanted to say that because if you're walking in thinking, oh, I have one machine, but we've sold a really great product to somebody, like injection molder, right? Like there are a lot of little injection molders around that do like keychains or whatever, and they sell thousands and thousands of keychains, and it's a great opportunity to automate, but it's two guys in a garage that are doing it. And so it's without some kind of technical buy-in by those guys, then it'll be difficult to manage long term, right?
Right. Yeah, that does
So,
make sense.
so anyway, what was your
So,
original question? I don't remember.
my original question was kind of helping companies formulate an idea of where automation could occur,
Oh yeah, like
and maybe having to change their order of operation or change something
sure.
about the process in order to accomplish that.
Okay, yeah. So actually, we do that quite a lot. The problem is it makes the sales cycle really long for us, right? Because that means that there's no project today. But I mean,
Right.
that's our problem, not your problem, kind of thing. But so we'll go into a factory and look at their. A lot of times when somebody's calling about automation, they have historically done a lot of manual processes, and they're looking at these manual processes, and maybe they have a lot of them, whatever. But they're looking at these manual processes and thinking that they could maybe do something, right? And then we go look at them, and it's like, well, really, because a manual process, if you have a lot of operators, you can do a lot of strange things, right? You can have guys doing, you can have guys doing 6 jobs, right? And I mean, if their load is low, right? So you look at a guy who's running a press, let's say, right? And his press is running at, I don't know, 1 stroke a minute, right? Because your volume is at that level, right? So he's making some part and it runs, it's 2 hand stroked, right? So it's manually stroked. So he picks up a blank, loads the press, strokes it, right? And then takes the part back out, puts it on a skid, picks up another part, puts it in the press, strokes it. You know what I'm saying?
Mhm.
So that's a slow operation and it's driven by the demand for the part or the sales or whatever, right?
Right.
Um, maybe he even has enough time because the sales uh, requirement was that he needs to make 500 parts a day and he can do 1 a minute, and I don't know what the numbers come out to, but he has extra time, right? So then he can also maybe handle his skid. He can like take the skid when it's finished, go stretch wrap it, put it on in the warehouse or whatever, and then get a new skid, put it there, and then start working again, right? So he's now doing more than one job, right? And
Right.
so if you look then at the factory and you have all of these guys doing multiple jobs, I guess my point is that if you're doing manual operations, a human can do lots of different things, right? So
Mhm.
a human can like be split, his job can be split with other humans in different ways than machines can, right? So you have to basically rebalance the human tasks if you want to automate, right? So
Right.
maybe you have to combine, instead of combining like logistics and operations in one human, you have to just combine 2 different operations and then give the logistics back to the guys, right? Something
Right.
like that.
Yep. No, that
So
makes a
that
lot of
happens
sense.
a lot, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So what's the kind of breakdown of the customers that you have? You said you typically work with larger companies. Is there a percentage of, 10, 15, 20 guy shops that you work with too?
Uh, that's a small shop. Generally, those guys aren't looking for automation. I don't know what the future holds. I,
Hmm.
there's a potential. Automation is getting cheaper. I mean, I don't know how everything's going to play out in the end, but the automation is, I don't know, it's becoming more accessible, I'd say. And the more people are generally more technologically savvy now. So it seems like maybe automation will move down in the plant hierarchy or the manufacturing hierarchy, whatever you want to say. But generally, it's been large corporations that buy this stuff, right? So that's the market that we've lived in most of the time. We do like we have some smaller manufacturers, but when I say that, generally it's like 200 employee kind of places.
Okay.
We've, I don't know, can't think off the top of my head if we've done anything like 50 or not. It's just those guys generally don't want to spend. That's another problem is you have to spend money to get into it, right? So
Right.
yes, the payback could be maybe only 2 to 3 years, but it's $150,000 today, right? So can you take $150,000 and put it into like a capital investment for the plant? You know, that's, and maybe those guys could borrow the money and it wouldn't be as big a deal, but I can see a smaller corporation, like somebody who does, I don't know, $3 million a year in gross revenue. I would think it would be like an ask, a pretty big ask to like invest 150K into a machine, unless
Right.
they financed it.
Right.
So generally, like the bigger guys are who buys equipment. So I I don't think that's. I actually have been kicking this around, and I've been talking to some people about it. There's an idea that I had that maybe, I mean, right now there are leasing companies that will buy things like automation or equipment and lease it to the manufacturer, right? Which I think is an interesting idea. So
It is a great
instead of
idea.
having to front $150,000, they can just lease it from this leasing company who bought it, right?
Right.
But we've been floating the idea here about maybe doing a straight like subscription rental, whatever you want to call it,
Hmm.
right? And so building a machine, giving it to the customer for a nominal charge, down payment-ish kind of charge, right? And then
Right.
charging them like let's call it even a security deposit, right? And then charging them by usage.
Mm.
So if you or by hourly, right? So if which I think is kind of an interesting concept, and I don't know if anybody's doing it yet, but if you looked at your operation, like right now you're paying your guy $23 an hour plus benefits or whatever it is. I don't know. So you're all in at, I'm going to just make something up. It doesn't matter what it is, right? If you're all in at $27 an hour and you can get a piece of equipment to come in here and pay $25 an hour for that piece of equipment, why wouldn't you do it? Right? And it does the operation
Sure.
that you need it to do, right? Why would you do it?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
we'll see how
Yeah.
that
That's
plays
a
out.
that's a really cool concept. And that's kind of the way that I picture the future of robotics. And you can like totally correct and shoot down my idea. But I picture these robots almost as an apprentice. And so when you have that guy, you're not talking like a super complex engineering job. You're talking about the guy that's splitting his time between offloading those parts from the press, going back, getting a pallet, those types of things that you were talking about. Having a humanoid robot that could follow that guy around for a couple days and see exactly what he does. It's the same thing every day, you know, and then essentially learning what the scenario is and then just doing it. That's what I would see the future as.
Yeah, well, that's a ways out. We're not there yet. So most of the, I don't, have you looked at, I mean, you can look at our website if you want,
Yeah.
www.lioninc.us. But what we do primarily is industrial robots. And what that is
Yeah.
it's a 4 to 6 axis articulated mechanism, right? It's an arm.
Right.
So uh, it doesn't, and there's no AI. I mean, they have stuff like that, um, but most of the operations that we do with the mechanisms are like fixed, right? So
Right.
that's why we talk about high volume, low complexity. It's because you basically set the system up to do one thing and do it perfectly all the
Right.
time with no, yeah, there it is. So that's actually hard automation that you're showing right there. That's uh, a a mechanism that's not flexible, right? It only does one thing. It will never do anything else. The reason that that's worth doing, though, is because that particular part, I don't know if you want to scroll back to what it was doing quick.
Oh, go back up. Yep.
Yeah, back up to the top there. I think it was the top.
Do you see it?
But anyway, that one. That's an anchor, like a concrete anchor, right? You know what I'm talking about? You drill a hole in a piece of in the concrete, you drive that down into it. But that anchor will be made like forever. Like they're never going to not make that anchor. So that machine will run forever, you know? As long as they maintain it, it'll run, and they'll just run it forever, and it'll do what they need it to do. So that's a good fit for hard automation, right? It's an easy application that will run forever. So flexible automation, if you scroll down, there are robots in there too.
The other automation.
What's that?
Where would I find one of the flexible? Where would I find one of the flexible ones? On that same page?
Yeah, they're just like on the page there. Just scroll down. I don't know. We can also look on the web, but if you click the YouTube page, I don't know where the link is. Somewhere there.
The images are still loading up. Oh, there.
Is it working?
Yeah, I see the images now. I do not see like one of the robotic arms that we were chatting about on this page anyway.
Yeah, it's really slow for me right now. I can't really see
because that's
what's happening. Yeah, that's a piece of hard automation too.
Yeah. Yep. I'll share a link in the bio to your website. People can check it out too.
Okay. Well, whatever. You can look in the link, and you can look on the website. There's also some YouTube links. You can go to the YouTube channel, and there's some videos of like palletizers and material handling robots in there, that machine tending stuff that you could look at. And it's a lot of robots, a lot of yellow robots, because we do a lot of FANUC work. But we do other stuff too. Just I happen to have worked for FANUC a long time ago, so I kind of tend towards FANUC just because it's familiar, you know.
Yeah.
So
what if somebody wanted to work with you on automation, is there a specific geographic area that you service?
No, I mean, we tend to stay in the Chicago region just because we're here. But I mean, we've done work in New York and Mississippi and California and Florida and Alabama. So no, prefer regional, like Wisconsin, Illinois, Michigan, Ohio, Indiana, Iowa, Minnesota, but it doesn't matter.
Gotcha. Okay. We've
shipped machines to Mexico even. So
what is the most kind of surprising or large change that you've seen in the robotics space over, say, the past 5 or 6 years?
There really isn't a lot of change in the industry in terms of interesting new developments. There's some new tech that's cool, but I'm not sure if anybody else would think it was a big deal. Like, for example, you ever heard of bin picking?
Yeah.
Okay, so that's and it's been kind of this thing that they've been promising us for a long time. They said they had it maybe, let's say 10 years ago, they probably said they had it, but they didn't, right? Like the big OEMs for robots said, hey, we can offer bin picking, and they kind of couldn't, right?
Right.
But now they can. So that's kind of a big win in the industry. Like you can do like 3D part finding, part locating is actually a real thing now. And we've done some cool 3D quality control with these camera. They're call them cameras, but they're actually like camera rangefinder combinations, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's really cool, and that's been a pretty big deal.
So almost just kind of finding parts that are out of spec with defects or whatnot as they're going into the bin,
Yeah.
and then eliminating.
Well, and you can pick, the thing is you can pick unoriented parts in 3D space. That's the big deal, right? So if let's say the factory uses, I don't know, uses these. Okay, I got an example. So in a stamping factory, the sheet's going into the press, right? And it's stamping parts. Let's say they're stamping a bracket, right? It's a 3D part, right? It stamps like a angle piece or something. It's a bracket. Right. And they just fall out. The way that they've done it historically is they put a bin underneath the where the waterfall comes out, right? So all the parts are just coming out into the bin. So they're unoriented. Let's say the bin is big. It's like a I don't know, like a 4 foot by 4 foot bin, right? Yep. So then they take the bin currently and have to hand pick all of them out. And if there's a secondary operation, let's say they need to go into another machine to do drilling and tapping or something, right? Mm-hmm. So they have to hand pick all those out, load the other machine. Well, now we can actually do that with a robot. We couldn't do that until recently, right? Because so now what we do is we mount a 3D camera over the bin, right? And the robot or the camera system finds all the parts, identifies the most, like the top one, the robot goes and picks it. And it actually can pick in 3D with 3D orientation, right? So now I can pick the part and know how I have it in my grip and put it into the machine. Mm-hmm. So that's a pretty new development, and it's a pretty big win for especially like smaller manufacturers. The problem is it's kind of pricey still. So we just put in a system like that, and the camera system alone was $30K cost, right? So you put that on top of the other system, and it adds, 30% more to your, or something like 20% more to your cost to be able to do that. But it could still be cost justifiable if you have a 2-shift operation or something, right? Right. If these guys are doing it all day, right, there's a win there, right?
Or if you have a lot of turnover in the position because it's boring and you're just having a hard time staffing.
It's not a fun job. Yeah. Like I think that's a big problem in manufacturing right now. These jobs are not fun. Right. So,
yep. What is the biggest challenge that you're experiencing in business right
now? Give me something. Narrow down your question.
For example, could it be you're wanting more growth? You're not quite getting where you need to be with the exposure side of things. You're having problems sourcing material, sourcing robotics because of tariffs, or, what's the biggest one?
Well, so the tariffs, if you want to talk about tariffs, I don't see a problem with tariffs. I'm kind of one of the, in my circle, meaning non-manufacturing, I mean my personal circle, my friends and my family and things like that. There's a lot of negativity about the tariffs right now, but that's really not my, what's that?
Thanks to the media.
Yeah. My experience already with the tariffs has been really good. I just posted on LinkedIn. There's a company called...
I saw that post. I was going to ask you about it. That's interesting.
The Automation Direct post?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I got an email from them, like, saying what they were going to change, right? And so they spelled it all out. And I went on their website, downloaded their parts list and with the pricing and everything, and went through it and did a spreadsheet and like quantified it all because I wanted to know, right, what really changed.
Right.
And in the end, their overall pricing went down. So I like that. I think that that's not going to hurt anybody if, like, a big a distributor of parts that are primarily sourced from imports, right? A big manufacturer that primarily sources their parts overseas is lowering all their prices after the tariffs. Like, that means everybody can do that, right? So I'm going to do more business with them because they're being cool.
Yeah, unlike Amazon, who wants to like put a price next to all of their products that says this is how much more you're paying for this because of the tariffs.
Yeah, so that's not cool, right?
Yeah.
And I've had other distributors do stuff like that. Send me emails saying, we're going to, at checkout, we're going to put in a tariff surcharge, and so I'm kind of out. I mean, I'm sorry those guys like have to think that they have to do that for their business, but I'm kind of out. I don't. But having said that, I have to pay some tariffs, right? Like I have to pay. Some parts that I'm going to buy have gone up in price. I've seen price increases on some stuff that we have to buy, including steel, right? We buy raw material to make frames and things like that, and those prices have gone up.
Sure.
The but saying that, I'm in the business of doing business with manufacturers, right? So manufacturing is getting really hot right now. They're pulling ahead projects. They're, like everybody's looking for work. So, I mean, I don't want to say my prices are going up because we're really not raising our prices. But if I do 5 projects instead of 3 projects today, then that's better for me, right? And so my thought is over the next, I don't know, 2-3 years, our biggest hurdle is going to be trying to grow into what's the opportunity that's out there, right? And I don't see the price increases as an issue at all. It'll be way offset by the opportunity.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. And, I always try to remind people it's been 3 months. And it hasn't even been 3 months since the tariffs went into place. It's only been a month. So, while the news wants to get you all fired up and like, oh, this is killing people, it's really not. It's really not. And, sure, some people are having a rough time with it, but there are exemptions you can get. There's a lot of different things that you can do, but it's forcing people to do something that we've been saying for a long time: buy US, buy American made. And so now you got to buy American made. It's just this is enforced,
Sure.
which is a good thing. It's gonna be a good thing for us. And
I agree.
think that if robotics can help us address some of that labor need, that labor shortage, that's going to be huge. And I think it's going to have to be that. It's going to have to be a lot of robotics.
Well, the biggest problem for factories is, well, I mean, I think that there's 2 problems for factories in this environment. One's going to be, and it's worse for smaller manufacturers, and it's going to be easier for large manufacturers. And it's primarily because, well, 1, access to capital, 2, comfortability with automation, right? But then the second hurdle is really just, I lost my train of thought.
There's a lot of hurdles. I mean, there are a lot of hurdles. I mean, it's a complex issue, and we talk about the complex issue of the labor shortage all the time, and it's really comes down to we just aren't going to get our kids interested in this unless we either reframe it,
that's true,
or we make the pay way higher.
Well, and we're not talking about when you talk about that, you're talking about like trades, right? And the trades are definitely still going to be important in the factories. The pay is actually really good. I just read an article. I can't tell you where or what it was about specifically, but it was 3 people who had just graduated from trade school who all started at high 5-figure incomes, right? Like,
wow,
that's where the trades are right now. And so I don't think that the money is a problem. It's just people, 1, probably don't know about it, right? And 2, think that it's beneath them. That's a big problem, I think, that we've had in the US over the last, I don't know, probably 20 years, is that everybody has to get a college degree. And so we don't have any tradespeople. And that's really separate from the operators, right? The operators are always the same. Those are the people who didn't go to school for anything, right? And they work at McDonald's or Walmart or the factory or whatever, right? And those people are important, but those aren't the tradespeople.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. So we're going to have to wrap up here, but I think that you are going to be critical to, to really just facilitating this onshoring that's going on in the next few years here. And I just want to make sure that your potential customers have any information they need. Like I said, we'll put a link to you in the bio. Where would you like people to find you?
Well, you can go to the website. It's www.lioninc.us, and you're going to link that, right?
Yep.
And then you can find us on LinkedIn. You can find us on YouTube. You can send me an email. Our email is on the website. It's info@lioninc.us, or you can go direct to me. It's todd@lioninc.us.
Awesome. Well, you're a wealth of information, Todd. Thanks a lot for joining today, and look forward to chatting with you some more in the future.
All right, man. Thanks.